Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar. We're very happy to have you here. We're going to wait for a couple minutes before we get started. Dr. Ghaib, I think we shall get started.
All right.
Good evening all. Welcome to this first edition of TBS Distinguished Speakers series. I am Fadwa Chaker. I am professor at Toulouse Business School in our Casablanca campus. And I have worked over the past 10 years as a social entrepreneur in the fields of education and access to learning. Today's topic revolves around one of the key questions we are facing as citizens of the world. Facts and data from large organizations such as the World Economic Forum and United Nations attest to a profoundly and rapidly changing world. We are indeed faced with severe challenges, rising inequalities, social fractures, and global ecological disturbances have all enticed business and thought leaders to reimagine the way we think about business and the way we do business and create value. Social entrepreneurs and social innovators have emerged as these brave, selfless, and innovative change makers whose drive is to solve societal problems first and foremost, while creating economic value. The 2020 United Nations World Youth Report, for example, shows that there is a greater representation of nascent social entrepreneurs than nascent commercial entrepreneurs in 3 of the world's regions, namely the Middle East and North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Western Europe. In 2018, social enterprises represented 3% of UK's national GDP and 8% of the GDP of France. They also represented 5% and 10% of national employment in these 2 countries, respectively. And these figures are on a rise. So taking that into perspective, Is it to say that social entrepreneurship has or is increasingly becoming the norm or the new way of addressing today's wicked problems, especially that these problems have become even more complex with the global COVID pandemic? To reflect on these questions and on others, I have the pleasure to invite today Dr. Majid Kaïssar El Ghaib, who can be described indeed as one of the major catalysts of the social entrepreneurship and social innovation ecosystem in Morocco and Africa. Dr. El Ghaib got his PhD in civil engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and holds an engineering degree from École Centrale de Lyon and École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées from Paris, France. He began his career at Ardaman and Associates, a subsidiary of Tetra Tech, one of the largest US companies in the environmental engineering and renewable energy. And upon his return to Morocco, Dr. El Ghaib helped develop one of the largest Moroccan consulting firms, CID, which was specializing in design and implementation of sustainable development projects in various sectors, such as water resource management and construction infrastructures, and so on. Dr. Ghaib was also appointed in 2000 as CEO of ONP, the National Office of Fisheries of Morocco, a large public institution in charge of the Moroccan fisheries sector. Currently, he is professor at ESCA School, the ESCA École de Management or School of Management, and heads the Social Innovation and Sustainability Institute. Dr. Ghaib is also the president and founder of Omega Holding, an investment company in the fisheries sector, and he's currently the chairman of the board of directors of Enactus Morocco, a nonprofit organization, part of Enactus Worldwide, which is a community of students, academic, and business leaders committed to using the power of entrepreneurial action to transform their lives and shape a better and more sustainable world. Dr. Ghaib, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you for being with us.
A pleasure.
Thank you. My first question to you is really that basic first question that we want to start with, and the title is all about: has social entrepreneurship become the new normal? Can we think of it as the ultimate solution for our country and our continent to overcome its most challenging problems?
Thank you very much, Fadwa. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to share some thoughts on entrepreneurship in general and social entrepreneurship. And actually, one of the major, I would call it major theme of debate today would be, should we call it just entrepreneurship, not social entrepreneurship? And the new normal should be that. And basically, entrepreneurship, as we all know, it's about creation of value. Creation of value, and that creation of value with taking, at the same time, taking some risks and getting the rewards after that. It's basically how us as human have seen rewards. What are the rewards? Up to now, the rewards were essentially, I would call them financial rewards. We were looking for profit, okay? What we call the bottom line. Today, and more, since the beginning of this century, we're talking about the triple bottom line. It's about profit, people, and planet, basically. So it's all about that. So we had to wait basically for this pandemic to really realize that it's not just theory, it's not just words. We need to do something. We need to think about human, we need to talk about nature before profit. Profit should be there because there is no entrepreneurship without profit. But it's how we direct those profits, how we divide the dividends, and how we see the world that is very important. And I think that the COVID crisis showed us that, first of all, after all what happens in terms of, I would call it I would call it, I don't find the word, but basically what COVID told us is that nature has its priority. And by, I would say by stopping a little bit of our mode of production, which has been there for almost 2 centuries, the idea is we have been eroding the common wealth and the shared wealth that we have on our planet. And as you know, basically in 7 months, we basically take all the resources that the planet can sustain in 1 year. So in 7 months, we have already basically we have already finished. So we live on credit. We live on a loan, and the loan we're taking it from our children. So we don't see it on the short term. But COVID came here as a whistle blowing and told us that that's enough. We should stop. And it's all now the after crisis should be an era where we should think more about nature and humans. And anything that deals with technology should be a means and not an objective. If you remember, before we're talking about startup, we're talking about technology, but all we think about it is how we can make a lot of money through technology. We should focus on technology, but we should see how we can use technology to make our living better today. That's one very important thing. And I would call it a general, it's a reflection that all of us should have and think about it. We're not talking about just African, but I would like to come back to Africa and say that basically the African continent is the only place that is left for economic growth. That's the only place.
Tell us more about this, because this is very important.
Yeah, I think that Africa is the last border, and everybody says it, I'm not the first one to say it, but Africa is the last border for economic growth. When I say it's the last border, it means this is where we have all the resources and all the lands that we need for the next 50 years, or at least 50 or century, basically. We need arable lands, we need resources, and all of those are in Africa, basically, in general. The rest have been already perished, or there is no more of those resources. So, but the problem is in Africa, we also have a lot of opportunities, and on the other side, we do have a lot of challenges. And the challenges are environmental challenges, but also social challenges. And the word today, and Africa is I would say, a mirror of our way of producing, a way of our way of life, basically. Okay, and all the image of it is in Africa for the moment. So we do have wealth and resources, but on the other hand, we do have enormous challenges. And among them, the simplest one is we're basically 1.2 billion Africans on this continent.
And enormous opportunities as well, right?
Yeah,
enormous opportunities. When there is a challenge, there is also an opportunity. And
yes.
And
But my point was just to give you one number.
Okay.
In terms of access to electricity, 1/2 does not have access to electricity. They are in the dark. They cannot even communicate like we're doing right now. Okay, so how about the next generation of leaders tomorrow? So the idea is really to think about the future and think about how it's a shared responsibility that we all have. When I say we, mean humankind. Africa is the last border of the economic growth, and we should do our best to make it as such. It means we have to be sustainable and we have to be inclusive. Those are the two.
That's a great thought, because it really takes us to think through the growth models that we need to put in place for this Africa that we all dream of, in terms of seizing these opportunities and transforming them into real value that can be captured by Africans and that can contribute to human development in Africa. That's all great. Now, I want really to focus on that and to give our audience a sense of where we come from. Because when we talk about social entrepreneurship, 10 years ago, it wasn't the way it is. It wasn't the picture it is today that we have today. We were typically talking about a few very scattered interventions, typically undertaken by some large private organizations or public organizations to encourage some entrepreneurs through one initiative or the other. Today, we have a much more structured environment, right, don't we? And it has been a pathway, really, a long journey to get to where we are today. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ecosystem today in Africa and Morocco and how strong it is? And is it strong enough? Do we have the right institutions in place to make sure that we're going to give to these social entrepreneurs the right place to thrive and grow and bring this change that we're all talking about?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. I mean, are we ready? And it has been since the 60s, since the independence of most of African countries. The question is, can we do it ourselves? Can we do it? Because most of it have been done by others. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have different countries and we do have different ways of handling development. But in general, I would say that since the beginning of this century, Africa has moved into, there's an awareness that we should do something by ourselves, okay? So that reflects into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, basically. So, but if you take the ecosystem from different countries in Africa, they're diverse. They're not at the same level, all of them. For example, Anglophone Africa would be more advanced in terms of entrepreneurial ecosystem. For example, I just give you some numbers. For example, if you take the investment that went into startups in Africa, we're basically having $2 billion of investment that went there, okay? And it went from 200 million to 2 billion in almost 5 years, 4 to 5 years. So it has been multiplied by 7. So there is a real, I would say, a real interest into investing into startups in Africa. That's one thing. And the leaders are mostly Anglophone ones. They're not Francophone ones. If you take Nigeria, which is the first, the investment in Nigeria is 747. 700.
How is that? How is that? Do you have some sort of explanation?
We'll come back. Let me just give you the numbers, yes. and then we try to understand the.
All right. Mm-hmm.
So Nigeria is the first. It basically drains something like $750 million. Kenya is 564. Egypt is 211. South Africa is 200. And Rwanda is 120. And guess how much is Morocco, for example? It's 7 million, 7. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's 1% of Nigeria in terms of attracting investment into startups. And Morocco is doing better in terms of global economy. But here, those numbers are just the startup numbers, okay? But it gives you an idea about the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that's one thing. And of course, all the discussion that we will have today during this hour, we're talking about social innovation-driven entrepreneurship. We're not talking about survival type of entrepreneurship. Okay? The entrepreneurship, the enterprises that are based on innovation. And here we're talking, when we talk about startups, even the startups, usually all the startups in Africa, most of them, they have a social impact. So this is also a good direction. We're going on the right. So you will have, for example, some startups that are in the fintech, for example, M-Pesa is the oldest one that is in financial inclusion, for example, aerobotics in agri-tech. You can have the last mile for BOP, which is in logistics, in tech logistics, Zipline in med tech, and solar off grid for the access to energy. So there are some good examples, some success stories. And actually, I'm trying to write a book with a friend of mine in Canada. We're trying to write a book on social innovation and entrepreneurship in Africa. And those are very good example of successful startups. I call them social startup, or maybe just startup. And startup means social startup also. So those are very important. Why? I can give you one way of explaining it. It's culture. And culture is recognized one of the pillar of the seven, I would call them the 7 pillar of the ecosystem. An ecosystem is first the policies, the policy of the country. It's about finance, that's the second pillar. It's about culture. So culture is the third one. It's about support organization, the ones that support the startups. It's about human capital. And we're talking here about educational institutions, for example. And we're talking about markets. Market can be the early, the corporations can be the early buyers, for example, and the network that can offer for startups. And the last one would be the infrastructure, okay? So this is how you evaluate and assess an ecosystem. And culture is one part. So one of the explanation between Francophone Africa and Anglophone Africa, one of the explanation would be culture, okay? Maybe the English were more practical, more, I would say more operational. So this is what they left in there in the old colonies, I guess. So those are and now you said that 10 years ago, there was nothing or almost nothing in terms of ecosystem in Morocco, and now we're getting into something. Yes, we're moving, but basically all I would call them the supporting organization, the one that helps startup understand the field in which they are and help them scale and impact more. Those they were like I would say that it started like 7 or 8. The oldest would be around 8 to 10 years old as a structure. Enactus is older than that. We started in 2003, but we were almost the only one at a certain point. Then there was some others that came, but the supporting organization that you see today, most of them started between 8 to 10 years ago.
Yeah, so, sorry to interrupt you on this real quick, just to give our audience a sense of what Enactus is doing real quick. So what do you do? So you were at Enactus, you joined Enactus in 2013, right? And just to give a quick overview of what you do, and then you take it from there.
Okay. Well, Enactus is an organization. It's a worldwide organization, and in Morocco we have Enactus Morocco, and each one is independent. We're not directly, I would say, managed from elsewhere. We are locally rooted, but we participate in a network, and the idea is to train leaders of tomorrow. And we were the first one to really push into training leaders of tomorrow on sustainability. Okay, so what we train them through entrepreneurship. So we use social entrepreneurship to really sensitize our youth into the importance of sustainability, but also push them to rely on themselves as entrepreneurs. And they don't all finish as entrepreneurs, but at least they can be intrapreneurs in their companies, etc. So the idea is every year we train something like 5,000 to 6,000 students a year. And our ambition is to go to really 10,000 for the moment. And the idea also is to make sure that that the ecosystem basically get reinforced through our action. So we give a deal flow of projects, of sustainable projects. A year we give like something like 250 a year. So we are the I would say the principal provider of deal flow for the incubators today. So that's basically it.
And you're also, yeah, there's a lag, sorry. And you're also, you have this title of inspirers, because you don't just train, you go get talent and find this talent and inspire toward social entrepreneurship and get typically students embark on such adventures.
And actually, so, we don't go and look for them.
Come now. They come in.
Yeah, they come to us. This is a very important in our way of doing business. We don't go to students. They have to be motivated. They have to be motivated and come to us. Right. So they hear about us and come. We covering most of the campuses in Morocco. We are on almost 120 campuses in Morocco. So it's with 5,000 to 6,000 students, it gives you the strength of the network. I mean, imagine of all those 5,000 working on one challenge. For example, access to water, access to electricity. It's a real power that we have. So that's very important for us. It's very important as an inspirer, as you said.
It is indeed. And then there are the incubators that are growing in number and focusing more and more on sustainability issues. And we're going to probably talk about this towards the end. Incubators are also seen that are integrated into business schools and universities more and more. Yeah. But before getting to this, one of the most important questions as well, when we talk about social innovation and impact, it's about scaling. How do we scale impact? In one of the papers that I presented at, there's a lot of research going on in the field. In one of the research that I found that was presented at the International Social Innovation Research Conference in Glasgow in 2019, we found that the largest social impact, or the best way to scale social impact, is through working with the inspirers at the inspiring level, just as Enactus is doing. And there are multiple ways of scaling, either through expansion or organic growth, through replication, or through platforms, for example. Mm-hmm. How do you see, how feasible is scaling organizations such as Enactus to expand social impact as much as possible, both in Morocco and in other countries, in other African countries?
Well, thank you very much, Fadwa, because yeah, you're giving me some arguments that I can use because when you work in this field, not everybody is convinced, so you need to convince them, and it's also about uh, expanding our knowledge throughout the network and making sure that people understand the importance of organization, supporting an organization like Enactus. And most of all, as I said before, when I talked about the 7 pillars of the ecosystem, one of them is the supporting organization. And it's very important.
Organizations.
Yeah, it's very important that we reinforce and consolidate that small, I would say, small network of incubators and inspirers in general. We need to do that, and it's when we say we need to help them, we also need to help them financially. Otherwise, they will go, because you need some. I mean, you cannot just be on the voluntary basis. You cannot just be a non-profit, by just I would say a charity. You cannot be a charity. You need to be maybe a non-profit, but with a balance, at least with the balance revenues. Okay, so that's the first thing. So supporting organization are very important, but most of all, to scale, we need to scale those organizations. That's one. And I'm going to talk about Enactus and tell you what we did. Okay, but in general, to scale, there are 2 levers, I would say. The first one would be partnerships. Partnerships are very important, and we can talk about this quickly. And the second is finance. Partnership and finance are the 2 levers on which you can work to really scale the impact. Partnerships are very important because we need social entrepreneurs usually work in a space where the government is not able to go, where corporate sector does not go because of the lack of
There's
interest.
No market for it.
Yeah, no market.
There's no
things
market,
are changing. Things are changing because the notion of markets goes beyond the selling. It's also it goes to the customer, to the I would say the way the customer think about society. And if you're not socially responsible as a corporate, they might not buy from you. And there are a lot of examples like that. And things are moving towards that, even in Africa, even in Morocco, we can see that. We saw that 2 or 3 years ago with the boycotts that we had. But the consumer is getting strong and aware about his rights. So it's very important to also to see the corporate sector as also a partner, and we can work together with the corporate sector to go. And we are working with some as Enactus, as a non-profit. We also working with the government, and we also working with some leaders in the corporate in the business sector. So partnership with government, partnership with the private sector, but also with the communities. You cannot just impose a way of an innovation to a community. You have to work with them. You have to co-create with them. So that's one thing.
Co-create.
Yeah, co-creation is very important, and it's part. I don't want to refer to Porter, but basically Porter talks about co-creation between the enterprise and the corporate sector and I would call it the civil society. So co-creation is very important, but we can also co-create with the government. And this is also what happens when we work with the, like INDH, when we work with the CRIs, the Centers for Investment, etc., the regional ones. So all of those are getting into that partnership. And we all know that one association, one organization cannot solve the problem by itself. One enterprise cannot do it by itself. The government itself cannot solve all the problems. So the partnership is very important. The second point is financing. We can also attract a lot of sustainable finance. They are today, more and more investors are thinking about impact. Foundations are also thinking, international foundations are also thinking about impact. So the idea is to make sure that we can attract them. And Morocco should understand that to attract big investors like impact investors in Morocco, we need to have a value chain finance that is not, that is all continuous from the big investor to the small project. And for the moment, we are building that. We are building through the incubators that exist, through the agency like La CCG, like Maroc PME, etc. Those are also, I would say, public agencies that work in the value chain. And of course, the money can come from donors or from banks, international banks, that are, or pension funds sometimes, that really want to impact. And impacting in Africa is the next objective and next challenge that we need to solve for. So when we talk about this finance and partnership, one thing which is the next challenge for us is how to measure impact. So this is a research that is still open for the moment. I mean, we do have some solutions, some ideas, but this is where research should go. So basically,
and there are interesting frameworks in that sense.
Yeah, and we need to work because today nobody will invest in a social venture unless they know that they can really impact and measure that impact. So maybe they can look for a small return on investment. They're still going to look for a return on, but they're not going to look for a 30% or 20%. They're going to look maybe in a 5%, maybe a 10%, but they will look for social and environmental impact. And we need to measure them. So that's the next challenge. So if we come back now to the case of Enactus, as I said before, we were created in 2003 here in Morocco. Our board is, I would call it a prestigious board. I love that because we have the big names in Morocco. We do have OCP, we do have BMCE Bank, we do have McKinsey, we do have Cosumar, we do have, and some sponsors will not be happy if I forget to talk about them, but the idea is we have 12 board members that are really helping and trying to really consolidate the strategy, consolidate the way we see things, and help our youth think about impact and think about technology to solve social problems. So we started, I mean, if we take our revenues, for example, before 2010, the revenues were based on sponsorship. And we had, like, I would call it 1 million dirhams or in dollars, it would be around $100,000. Okay, that works sustainably for more than 10 years. But then OCP came into play, and OCP was one of the big players that helped the ecosystem get bigger and scale a little bit. So in 2013, they start putting some help in some, I would call them supporting organization. They help them. And basically, in our case, we moved from 1 million dirhams to today to almost 2 or 18 million dirhams. So 18 times what we had in 2010. So in terms of money, I think the scaling is there, but it's not all about money. It's also how an organization can scale also. It's about human capital. It's about making sure
organic growth.
Pay them. Yeah, it's an organic growth, internal growth, where you need to pay the people that work with you at the same rate as the market. Okay, and we do that. We try as much as we can to pay at the same level as the market. So we need, in general, we need human capital, and we need to pay them well. And that's a general, I would say, tendency today worldwide.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The second is to see how much impact we have. So we do have an impact on almost, I would say, 70,000 people a year, roughly. So 70,000, it's a big number, but really, I would be ashamed to say that it's a big number. It is when you talk about a small organization, but when you look at the Moroccan scale and when you look at the African scale, we need to impact by millions. If you remember, I talked about electricity, the access to electricity. It's a market of 600 million people that don't have access to energy. This is a huge market. It's a 10 billion market, $10 billion market. So it's not only a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And this is where we talked about the last border of economic growth. Africa is the last border. So there's a lot of opportunities, but we should look at them as a sustainable and inclusive growth, and not just making profit and live in Africa after that. So I think I would like just to finish with one thing, is to talk about I'm a member also of the Federation of the Incubators. And the federation is called MSEC, the Moroccan Startup Ecosystem Catalyst, MSEC. So MSEC was created and founded almost 2 years ago. And our main motto is to tell the people, the deciders, the politicians, the leaders in the private sector, to tell them that supporting organizations are very important and we need to help them. They cannot just do it for free, because up to now we were looking for money outside to help create an ecosystem. So we need really to do something within. I mean, we need to have the ambition, to have the means for our ambition, and it should be an ambitious vision that we should have. And we can talk about it if you want.
And thank you, Majid, because this takes me to really our last point. Because of time, we need to get closing before we open the floor to Q&A. I want us to close really on that reflection on how can we take it to the next level? What is yet to be done to achieve that scale that we're talking about? Yeah. We, as educators, both of us are educators, and we teach our students about social entrepreneurship, but there are some aspects that we cannot think of them realistically to be taught within the walls of a school, such as courage or risk-taking or going out and seizing opportunities. This is done in the field. This is learning by doing. And it really gets back to your point of how to scale these support organizations, just as you call them, within universities, partnerships. Just in one or two words, what are some key levers that we may, put action that we may leverage to make sure we get to the level that we were on? And let's take around 1 or 2 minutes for that before we open the floor.
I'll try to do it very fast. I think we already talked about the ecosystem and the 7 pillars. We need to really work on the 7 pillars at the same time. That's very important. But if we have to choose, I would say that the first pillar, which is policy, which is governance, that's a very important one. We need to have a vision. We need to have a government, a nation vision, a vision for the nation, a startup vision for the nation. Okay, so it's very important.
I like that.
We need that. That's very important. The second, and of course, goes with it all the regulations and stuff. Okay, so that's when you have the vision, the rest comes. The second is education. Okay, we can talk about incubators in universities, for example. That's very important, and we can see a wave of incubators in universities. But we have to keep in mind that's what you called at the beginning is inspiring, the inspiring organization. Here it's the inspiring incubators. They're not a professional incubators. They should be seen as such, okay? But those in academia, those incubators are very important because they will teach our youth, our students, how to learn by doing, putting your hands in the mud. You go there and you really create something. Prototyping is very important. So they need to beyond, of course, beyond slides and beyond I would say theory. We need to have hands-on experience. That's very important. And the second thing, that's one side of the I would call them the supporting organization. It's the academia side, but of course you need the professional ones, and those ones are, as I said before, they are federated in what we call MSEC. So those we have like 16 that are labelized by the government, by la CCG, and those 16 are the first ones, and we will have more later on. And the third one is to help supporting those organizations. That's the third one. So we need, beyond education, we need also to support those, because we can only scale in Morocco and in Africa if we have professionally rooted, I would say, incubators, accelerators, etc. So this is my
interconnected.
Yeah, and inner network, of course.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Thank you, Majid, for all these insights that are definitely, just really give us the big picture and do help structure our thoughts on this topic. Let me open the floor for the Q&A, and we've got a couple of questions here. First one that popped up here was, should we be inspired from Rwanda model that switched from Francophonia to Anglophonia, got rid from tribal political dispute, inherited from past colonization era? Now Rwanda has the highest growth in Africa.
Should we go one by one?
As you like. So we've got another question. Can you please define the term social business exactly? There is a huge confusion in the market regarding this definition, to the point that a lot of regular businesses branding themselves as social business. That's a great question. Yeah, because do you want to take them one by one, Majid? And
yeah, certainly one by one. Should be inspired.
Maybe shall we start with this one, probably, just to clarify what we mean by the term social business.
Okay.
And
there are a lot of definitions, and I'm going to just cite words, and then we come back to the definition. We're talking about entrepreneurship. Then we talk about social entrepreneurship. Then we talk about social business. And then we have also social innovation. So we have 4 terms, and social business is a term that was introduced by Nobel Prize winner Dr. Muhammad Yunus. Okay, and the idea for him is there are 7 principles of what he calls social business. So social business is by purpose needs to solve social and environmental issues. Okay, and that's the first thing. So the purpose is very important. The second thing is whenever it should be a business that has profits, but the profits should be reinvested in the company. Okay, so it should not be given to the shareholders. But it's his social business is a specific thing. He talks about also if somebody invests in you, the profits that you get should be directed towards the reimbursement of that investment. But when you finish reimbursing, then anything that is there as a benefit should stay in the company. Another one is you pay your employees better than the market, or at least as high as the market. And maybe one thing also is when you work there, you should work with joy and happiness. You're not there to really be in a bad mood. So maybe I forgot one or two.
But the most common one.
But the most important thing is benefits should stay there, or should stay to scale. That's the first thing.
By Muhammad Yunus.
Yeah, but for me, social business, it's a too small of a concept. Most of the businesses that you have, if you take the American school, you'll find that it's most of the time it's a for-profit companies. Mm-hmm. But the purpose is very important. You have to state your purpose and say, I'm here to solve this problem, social problem. Okay? So the purpose is very important. So that's one. Others, they would be some others, maybe in Europe, they will think about having more money. I mean, in your profit, some would go to as dividends, and some will stay in the company to scale. Okay, so you can have all sorts of.
It also depends on regulation. It depends on regulation. In France, for example, you've got l'entreprise sociale et solidaire. It also depends on the different jurisdiction. Yeah. May I move to? There are so many great questions that I want to really to take, and if you don't mind, Majid.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So Wafa Fatih is asking, to upscale social or scale up social entrepreneurship in Morocco, what do you think what do you think the role of corporations and private sector should be around devoting certain percentage of their gross income by law and not on a voluntary basis, like the Reinvestment Act in the USA? That's a great question. So making it compulsory for corporations to support scaling up of social entrepreneurship in Morocco.
Okay.
How about this?
My school of thought, if I may, is not to impose things on the private sector. There's no imposing will always bring you cheating and non-ethics things to. I mean, in general, if you just take the budgeting, when you have a budget for a country, a lot of people don't pay taxes. It's one way, it's a compulsory way of participating to the development of the country. But a lot of people don't pay. So going this way is not the right way. But what works in Morocco is most of the time when there's a vision, and usually when the king has a vision. Look at the COVID. When the king said, we need to help, most of them had put money, most of them, okay? So we had like a $3 or $4 billion of money that were injected in the economy, okay? It helped a lot, okay? But this is where it's just a king that give a direction, a vision, and say we need to all of us do something. And Moroccan love to please the leadership in general. This is very important. It's a way also to move a society. It's good. Whatever we can do is something. So
it's our culture. It's great.
Yeah, and it worked during the COVID period. So we should go. But for me, just finishing this, for me, partnership is very important, and the social entrepreneur and the social organization should really look for partnership. They should not just work with one. They should work with the government, with international institution, with the corporate sector, and try to, because we can only solve our challenges in Africa and in Morocco if we are all together. One cannot have a large impact.
Correct. Yeah, I totally agree. We've got a question from one of our Moroccan residents in abroad, at least. So they said, is it possible for Moroccan diaspora to start a social enterprise in Morocco and get any specific or special support?
Yes, definitely. Not as a diaspora, but as a Moroccan. You just there are some programs. There is Innov Invest, which is a program that is from la CCG, la Caisse Centrale de Garantie au Maroc. There is 3 weeks ago, or in March, beginning of March, we signed a partnership document with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and Maroc PME. So there were three bodies signing the partnership agreement, and it also helps. So, but it has to be industrial. That's a program for industrial startups. So if you have an idea that is a possible idea for an industry, that's something that can be seen as a good feasible project to be financed.
That's great. So this is Basma, and she's asking, I'm very intrigued about mentoring and guiding youth talents to be socially aware entrepreneurs. I want to know, based on what criteria you choose students, and how do you personalize training based on each profile? That's a great question as well. Basma is a student, so she's asking about how you select.
Okay. Well, as I said before, we don't select students. the students come to us. For example, if we are in TBS, if you have 10 students and they want to be part of Enactus, all they need is an academic advisor. Could be Fadwa, for example. She can help.
Yeah. Great, happy to help.
And they need, from the dean, they need an approval. So that's all you need. Approval from the dean, because they're going to have, they're going to work within the campus, and they need an academic advisor. That's all they need. And they come to us and they have, so, and then what we do, we don't train them on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or something. Usually students get their act together and they know what to do. So that we give them enough, I would say, material to refer to and to work on. And the academic advisor is also there to help them. But it's not about reading books, and it's not about listening to just videos, and it's about going on the field and working. So there's
doing the work.
Communities, you have to, there's empathy, there is listening, there's prototyping, and there's scaling, sustaining that first and then scaling. So I'll stop here, so at least give the chance to others to.
Yeah, I think we'll get just one or two more questions. This is very interesting. This is Ikram, and she's saying, what piece of advice would you give to college graduates who want to become entrepreneurs? Yeah. And how can social entrepreneurs attract talent? How can social entrepreneurs attract talent when there aren't high salaries and options? When? So how can social entrepreneurs attract talents when there aren't high salaries and options?
No.
This is how it is framed.
Well, first of all, when you are a startup, and this is a general question that can be for any type of startups, okay, whether it's social or purely profit. And as I said before, in the future, it won't be a differentiation between the two. It's going to be just a startup. Usually, you can attract people because you have a purpose. You want to solve something for something. That's one thing. And you can also attract human capital because, or if you use shares. I mean, I saw a lot of startups when they start, they give them stock options. They give them also, depending on the result, they give them a salary that at the end will be linked to the results. For example, they will give them a share. I saw something like they will give 2% shares within 2 years if the person achieves a certain result. So I think that's
incentives.
And I saw more and more
different types of incentives.
Yeah, the incentives are there, and there's a lot of incentives.
Okay, so some of the people, there are a lot of questions. Sorry, I can't take all of them because of time. Shall we go just for last one? And I think this is a misunderstanding because someone asked, what did you ask to cool off this wave of incubators in universities, knowing that it has become a tool for social economic development? And basically what our speaker said is not necessarily to cool off or to not to work with incubators in universities, but to work in closer partnerships with different bodies and institutions to really get them into a professional level and take students really to take their enterprises to scale.
Fadwa, I can Fadwa?
Go ahead, Majid. Yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
I can really, because this is a very interesting question, and I thank you, Fadwa, that you corrected misunderstanding. But I would like to add some more things. basically in academia, in universities, when they do research, what happens is there is a lot of what you call those brevets, les brevets, les
patents.
Patents. If you go, for example, in Marrakech, the University Qadi Iyad has thousands and thousands of patents. But the problem is how to convert those patents into industry or into an enterprise, basically. And what happens if you take the scale, what we call the TRL scale, it's a scale that gives you the maturity of the idea. And it goes from 0 to 10. And usually universities with the patents, they're usually between 0 and 4. And there is, I would call it a debt valley between 4 and 7. That's a debt valley. Nobody financed that. And then from 7 to 10, there are a lot of, this is where you find NASA, you find a lot of big companies that really are industrializing the patent. So that's 4 to 7 is where the professional incubator should go today, okay? But the academia, the one that are in the universities and business schools, should focus more in preparing those projects to face the phase between 4 and 7. So between 0 and 4, this is where the incubator in the university should work to professionalize and get the entrepreneurial spirit into the students. And what we found is most of the students that are in university, they don't want to venture, they don't want to risk, because it's not for them. They have never had something that is called entrepreneurial spirits. They don't want to go into that. For them, they want to do research. So how can we change that mindset? So the researcher becomes an entrepreneur. And this is what you find in the US, basically.
And a catalyst of social entrepreneurship. Yes. Yeah. Well, a lot of questions come to this idea that I'm seeing here of advice. How do students start? These are coming from our students. How to cope and overcome lack of experience when starting a business as an undergrad, and which advice do you give, and which sectors should you undertake to have big impact in Africa? That's Joseph as well. This is
That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
That's a good question, Joseph. Yes.
Yes. First, in general, the statistics showed that successful entrepreneurs are not the young ones. In general, they can be even people that work for 20 years, and then they are mature to be the real successful one. So this is where the incubators are very important. They can take, so first you have the academic incubator, like the one you have in TBS, you have, I think it's TB Seed. In ESCA, we have Excubator. So we do have, I can talk about the one I know, Excubator. What I do is I work with the students, and like, for example, I have a student that is in 4th year. So she still has the 5th year next year, but she's working on a very good idea, okay? And I took the idea and then I pushed her to pitch in one of the biggest incubators we have in Morocco, is called H7. So she pitched there and they took her, and she was able to get a grant, and the grant was a 200K dirhams grant, $20,000 grant, and she's still working on it. She didn't finish the grant, she's still working. So it will help. that grant will help her get a very good platform and make sure that she gets into the market. So they're helping her. So that's 20 grant is good. And then when they finish, they can help you go to the market with a 50K grant. That's also very important. So basically within 1 year, also, you can get $7,000 of grants, loans and grants combined. So if you have a good incubator, it can help you. I mean, in our case, I help students go into more professional ones. And actually, Enactus is also one incubator. If you have a full, sustainable, social impact venture, you can go to Enactus and they can help you also. Yeah. And we have 6.
I'm seeing, Majid, a lot of, I'm seeing that there are a lot of questions from our students asking about how to get coaching and how to get, in touch with all these things. Which sector should you undertake or should you be in to have one of the largest impacts in Africa?
I can answer that question very quickly. This is the importance of the incubator in school. When you have one, it will help you in this. Okay, they have a better knowledge of the ecosystem and they can help you. The second, what are the main challenges that we have? Basically, if you take Morocco, education is very important. So ed tech is very important. Agriculture, so agri-tech is very important. You can take agri-tech.
Health as well.
Health, of course, health is important. So education and health are very important. Then you have access to water, access to electricity is also very important for Africa. And logistics is very important, very, very important. And there are some success stories. While writing the book, I've been finding some like there's one in South Africa called Last Mile for Bop. It's a very interesting social enterprise in logistics. So it's a logistic. Some are very important also in recycling. I myself chair or CEO of a recycling from taking used oil and converting it into biodiesel. That's reducing the impact, the gas emission impact, etc. So there's plenty of things. And if you have a course on sustainability and entrepreneurship, then you can find a lot of things like that.
Yeah. Also a good place to start is this map between the SDGs and the key SDGs. So there are some key SDGs that have more impact on others, right? So if you have strong education, strong health, and strong access to electricity, then definitely you'll have a positive impact on other SDGs, and it goes that way. So probably we should focus on some of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals.
Let me give them one advice.
Yes.
There's
maybe to close with.
Yeah, there's one book that you can really find quickly in right now if you want. It's called Smart Dubai. Smart Dubai will match challenges, social challenges, with technology. That's a very good. If you read that, you'll have so many inspiring ideas, and they tell you for each SDG what type of examples you can follow. I mean, they will show you how to use drones, how to use virtual reality, how to use all the technology to solve for, and this is the way we should go.
That's wonderful. Smart Dubai. We keep having questions on and on. I don't know if you mind answering or.
Yeah, I can.
That's great. We had planned to stop at 7, but since we're having more and more questions, is the entrepreneur. Sorry, can you please use the Q&R section and as opposed to the chat section, because it's hard to navigate to the chat section. is the entrepreneur in the middle of Africa. So I keep losing this. Let me just, all right, I'll take another one. Who gets a microloan and support his or her family or small community, much different from Bill Gates or Steve Jobs.
Say it again. What's the question again?
Well, an entrepreneur that supports his or her family or small community in Africa, is she much different from Bill Gates or Steve Jobs? Not sure what exactly. By the time, do you want?
I can really. I talked about it before, but very quickly.
Yes, please, so that
or I at least, I do it at MIT. They do it. We separate what we call a survival, between quotes, survival entrepreneurship, which means you do something for your family, you try to find something from, and it could be a small business, it could be a restaurant, it could be a much bigger business, but still it's a classical business, a hotel, a small cafe or whatever. But what we are talking about today, we're talking about the innovation-driven entrepreneurship. And we can also add, I call it SIDE, which is social innovation-driven entrepreneurship. And this is what we're talking about. And that can really, I'm not going to say challenges Bill Gates, but Bill Gates, I mean, he has a long story, but an entrepreneur that solves for social impact is as important for us as any other startup, the classical startups. Yeah. I'm not going to go into more details, but basically, as long as you have economic impact, social impact, and environmental impact, that's a very important thing.
Yeah, Saeed is asking, does one need to choose between capitalism and social entrepreneurship? Thank you for this question. This is really what we're talking about. When Dr. Majid, when Dr. Majid said that one of the rules is to keep dividends to develop the company, what would be the incentives for those who invest in capital? So this is basically the classical question.
Yeah, it's exactly what Now, to answer, it's exactly what I said before. Social business is the one where you invest inside. Okay, that's Nobel Prize winner Dr. Muhammad Yunus. It's his philosophy. He said, "I only create social business, so the only incentive, whoever wants to, like, for example, he would go to Danone." And this is a classical case. He goes to Danone and works with Danone to create a social enterprise where they have an impact on Sri Lanka, on women in Sri Lanka, on youth in Sri Lanka. So that's a way of doing things. But the tendency now is to make money. For example, in my case, to tell you the truth, I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to have a business where I can have a positive impact on climate change, on the environment, but also get some money because I need to pay good wages and I need also to pay the investors. So investors, because if I need to scale, I'm only in one town. When I need to scale in several towns in Morocco, I need maybe 6 times the investment. And then I need to scale into Africa. So maybe I need hundreds times. So the investor is not just going to give me money for that. I mean, he will give me money to scale, but at the same time, get some dividends and some money out of that. But if you can do both, this is the way to go.
Yeah, correct. Well, I think we're going to take it. Should be, well, someone is asking about whether to switch to be inspired from Rwanda and switch to Anglophonia. These are large questions, but I think we're gonna.
let me answer this one and finish with that, okay? Because it can be inspiring.
And some other asking about, they're wondering about their future as Moroccan entrepreneurs. You finish with that and also with an advice, because I have a lot of questions asking about advice. What advice would you give to young students who want to embark on entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship?
Okay, so the Rwanda is an inspiring country. That's fine. But don't forget that Morocco is also inspiring. We tend to forget, I mean, we always see greener on the other side.
The other side.
Okay, but I think that Morocco also is an inspiring country. And the challenge that our king took 10 years ago or 11 years ago by taking the challenge of creating the biggest farm for energy, an energy
solar
farm.
Energy.
Yeah, it's the biggest worldwide. And we are ranked #1 by the UN in terms of sustainability and in terms of, especially in this case of energy production. So we are leaders. And as leaders, there's a lot of, I won't say a lot of, there are mistakes and there are good things. So when you're leader, you're bound to fall. But Morocco, because he fails one time and a second time, then he becomes stronger. Today, we have the strongest program, one of the strongest program of energy production in Africa. And our example is duplicated elsewhere, okay? So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to say, yes, and I wrote a white paper during the COP22 on that, I call it access to energy, what type of innovation for a sustainable and inclusive Africa. So the idea is to say, how can we innovate to get access to energy? And actually, access to energy, for example, is the most important challenge for Africa, because this is the only way we're going to industrialize Africa. But we should not do it the same way as the others have done. We should leapfrog into low impact industry. We can only do it using natural energy, which is wind, solar, hydro, and some other that you can find in Africa. So those are very important. So don't forget that we can be inspiring. And my only duty for the moment is to convince leaders that, yes, we're very good at producing big amount of energy, but we should be able to give some business models for Africans to use in villages in Africa. And that's also very important. I think ONE have tried to do it a long time ago. We still are doing it, but it's a small scale. We did it in Senegal, we did it in Mauritania, but we can do it at a bigger scale. And this is where you need entrepreneurs. This is where you need social entrepreneurs. I call them just entrepreneurs, not social entrepreneurs. Now, the second
That's the new normal.
Yeah, the new normal. The second question was about giving advice.
Oh, just there are many more. You know, just about how whether companies will keep making profit after COVID pandemic. Is it going to become introducing environmental aspects into business models? Is it going to be the norm? And as future entrepreneurs, what's the best direction to go for those?
So to the first question, remember that Morocco started before the pandemic, started revisiting its development model. C'est la commission spéciale pour le nouveau modèle de développement. Okay, so they had 6 months to give their report, but because of the pandemic, the king gave them another 6 months. So they should have given the reports in December. But I think with all what's happening right now, maybe it's not the right time to come up with that, but it's going to be soon the right time. So it means that I'm almost certain that the report will have something about sustainability and inclusiveness. Those are things that are for sure going to be in the report. So the new normal will be sustainable, should be, and will be sustainable, or will not at all be.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly.
Now the advice. First, it's very important while you're in school to really, this is where you can fail without any prejudices on your career, basically. Just do it. Fail if you want. Start early. Do it through, and this is where the incubators within the school are important. This is also where, if you belong to Enactus, this is where you learn. Just do it. And it's hard, you're gonna fail, but it doesn't matter. It's a lot of fun because kids are, your team, and you work with your team. You don't count hours. Our students don't count hours, because it's very important. It's something where they really feel they are impacting, and they really see the impact, because they take small communities of 10 people, of 10 families, and they impact them. You can impact them in education, and we saw that we need to do something in the rural area. You can impact them in access to water, because more and more our waters, our wells are polluted with all the fertilizers they put and all the chemicals they put on the lands. So they leach out into the wells. So you can do a lot of things, okay? And one thing, remember, if you are in a business school, remember that you don't need to be a science master. You can have friends that master that. You can find them in YouTube. So you don't have, your role as an entrepreneur is to make sure that you have the right person or the right tool but you don't have to be an inventor per se. And most of the time, take just, for example, platforms, digital platforms. You don't need to be a digital gig to really go into that. What you need to know what are the tools that you need. And that's a commodity, and you can buy it, okay? Yes. It's like going and buying bananas. You go and buy platforms, okay? So that's what you need to know. That's where the years you spend, instead of spending it just drinking coffee, drink a coffee with your friends while you're building a startup. And maybe that startup will have will be a success, or will be just a failure, but the failure, you will learn from that failure. That's all I can say.
There's no failure, there's just learning. There's always a learning.
Other ways of learning.
Yes. Thank you, Majid, for this very inspiring advice. I'm sure our students will love it, and not just the students, all our audience here that's composed of various people from different backgrounds and horizons. Thank you for this hour and a half talking. We're supposed to do this in an hour, and we just had amazing questions and amazing audience. Thank you very much for sharing your insights, and thank you for sharing with our audience, and thank you for asking questions. I'm hoping to see you soon on the second edition of TBS Distinguished Series Speakers. Until then, stay safe and have a very good evening. Thank you, Majid.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we had a steady audience all the time, so that's good. 55,
I know.
56, that's good. Plus Facebook, it's good. Thank you, Fadwa. And thank you to the team behind
Yes.
Saad and others.
Saad and Zainab, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good evening.